Welcome to the Aced It podcast, where we turn science into sense. This is our 12th season of Aced It, and we're brought to you via the Justice Community Overdose Innovation Network, or JCOIN. I would like to celebrate a bit this season, for as we start season 12, we've reached 21,000 downloads and counting. Woohoo! Yeah, not because we're famous, certainly not, but because that means at least 21,000 times our listeners have learned something about overdose, opioids, opioid use disorder, medication-assisted treatment, and/or harm reduction. And that, my friends, warms my very grateful heart. Also, just a quick plug for a few other JCOIN features that you might not know about. Did you know you can get technical assistance for your organization from the experts at JCOIN for free? And did you know you can apply for small research grants to help fund innovative study ideas? Yep, through JCOIN. And did you know you can apply to be a JCOIN LEAP scholar or investigator to improve your own skills? Also through JCOIN. If you didn't know about these things, check out our website, jcoinctc.org, and learn about the many JCOIN offerings beyond Aced It that may help you learn and grow in ways that improve lives. With that, I'm honored that you're with us. I'm Danielle Rudes, your host, and this is Aced It. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me again for episode 4 of season 12 of the Aced It podcast, where we're talking all about roles, responsibilities, and reactions to overdose. By that, I mean we're going to examine how people in different environments and roles prevent and/or react to overdoses. Today, we're diving into law enforcement's experiences responding to drug-related overdose. Over the past decade, more police officers have been tasked with carrying and administering naloxone, a life-saving drug that reverses opioid overdoses. According to White and colleagues' 2021, roughly 14% of law enforcement agencies in the U.S. report that their officers carry naloxone. But how do police officers themselves perceive the role in overdose situations? Do they see overdose calls as medical emergencies, criminal events, or something in between? Today, we'll explore findings from multiple studies on police perceptions of overdose response, views of naloxone, and the impact of overdose response training. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about the role of police at overdose incidents. Smiley McDonald and colleagues 2022 interviewed 17 police officers working across the United States to understand officers' perceived roles and what happens on scene during an overdose call. Police officers responding to overdoses describe the nature of these calls as unpredictable, sometimes quiet, other times overwhelming. Because they are often patrolling nearby, officers frequently arrive on the scene before EMS, often making them the people to provide aid. Their initial priority is securing the scene, treating it as a medical emergency rather than a criminal investigation, while also managing bystanders who might be emotional or distressed. Many officers note that by the time they arrive, evidence of drug use is often cleared away by bystanders. The location of overdoses vary based on the setting. In urban areas, overdoses commonly occur in cars, alleys, bathrooms, or homes, while rural incidents tend to take place in vehicles or front yards. Officers report feeling more capable of providing immediate assistance now that they carry naloxone, whereas before they often felt helpless. While some officers raised concern about individuals becoming agitated after being revived by naloxone, others dismiss this as uncommon. In certain jurisdictions, people who refuse hospital treatment may be taken to jail as a means of leveraging treatment engagement. However, officers generally express frustration that their role is limited to short-term interventions, as they lack the resources to address the root causes of addiction and prevent future overdoses. Similar findings are presented in studies conducted by Lloyd and colleagues 2023 and Xavier and colleagues also in 2023. Lloyd and colleagues interviewed 38 police officers in New York and found that during overdoses, officers felt as though they were being forced to wear what they called multiple hats, as being both police officers and medical professionals. Xavier and colleagues interviewed 22 Canadian police officers and found that their main priority was, quote, keeping the peace, unquote, and ensuring safety, particularly because patients could sometimes become violent and bystanders were often emotional. All in all, the overdose site is consistently characterized as tense. The officers that Xavier and colleagues interviewed also framed overdose events as a health or medical issue, not a criminal justice issue. But they saw themselves as uniquely positioned to respond to overdose since they were often patrolling, and several recalled instances of being the first person to find someone who had overdosed. Ultimately, these findings underscore the delicate balance police officers must maintain between providing medical assistance and meeting their job duties of ensuring security and safety at overdose scenes. Okay, now let's talk about police officers' views of naloxone specifically. For the most part, police perceptions of naloxone are positive. The study I just mentioned by Lloyd and colleagues, 2023, revealed that officers largely saw responding to overdoses as just another part of their job. Another tool on their belt was naloxone. However, as we just talked about, some felt overwhelmed by the expectation to serve as both law enforcement and medical personnel. The study by Xavier and colleagues, 2023, found that the majority of officers carried naloxone and said it was given to them by their department. They felt it was good that they carried it and said it was easy to use. Some officers also said they had specifically carried it for themselves and their coworkers since they were worried about being accidentally exposed to fentanyl or other drugs. Similarly, Smiley McDonald and colleagues, 2022, say that carrying naloxone has made them feel less helpless. However, other studies find that some officers have negative views of naloxone. For example, Murphy and Russell, 2020, surveyed 618 police officers in Pennsylvania and found that while officers viewed themselves as well-trained in naloxone, almost half believe that there should be a limit on how often someone who overdoses receives naloxone, and the majority of officers view naloxone as an excuse to continue drug use. Officers who had responded to more overdoses and had administered naloxone more times had more pessimistic attitudes about naloxone. In sum, while many police officers have positive views of naloxone as an essential tool in overdose response, there is a notable divide, with some expressing concerns about its implications and limits. Finally, let's talk about the impact of overdose training for police officers. Does training influence officers' confidence and willingness to carry naloxone? A study by White and colleagues, 2021, in Arizona, examined this very question, surveying police before and after they received training in overdose response. Results showed that officers initially had moderate confidence in recognizing and responding to overdoses, and they generally displayed strong support for carrying naloxone. After the training, their confidence increased significantly, along with their support for carrying naloxone. Perceptions did not vary across demographic, like gender, or workplace factors, like tenure on the job. This tells us that overdose-specific training is a promising avenue for increasing police understanding of and support of naloxone. Coupled with all the research we've previously reviewed in this episode, it looks like more training might be the way to go. And with that, we've reached the end of our episode on law enforcement's roles, responsibilities, and reactions to overdose. I hope you learned something from this episode, and I'll talk to you next time, where we'll be discussing emergency room doctors and nurses' roles, responsibilities, and reactions to overdose. See you again on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Aced It podcast. We love hearing from you. So if you have comments, topics to suggest, or some science you'd like us to cover in a future season, please write to me, Danielle Rudes, at Sam Houston State University. My email is drudes, D-R-U-D-E-S, @shsu.edu. And of course, thank you to the Justice Community Overdose Innovation Network, or JCOINS, Coordination and Translation Center, funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, housed at George Mason University, where this podcast originated. Thank you to our fabulous scriptwriters and also my fantastic doctoral students, Bryce Kushmerek-McCune and Jalen Magana. And a huge and heartfelt thank you to the team at Slonky LLC for their wonderful production as always. Remember to check out our website, jcoinctc.org, for more cool JCoin features and opportunities. And tune in again soon for another episode of Aced It.